this is Kim, and today I'm here to talk to you about the immune system. I think the immune system is by far the most amazing system in our bodies. It's very complex. I'm here today to give you a very general overview of the immune system. So you went to bed last night, you woke up this morning, you were not covered in mold, you weren't being decomposed by bacteria, fungi, worms, insect larvae, and that is thanks to your immune system. When an animal dies, it is immediately devoured by all of those pathogens who are going to start attacking the tissue the minute the immune system stops working. So your immune system is doing a lot of things for you on a daily basis that you probably take for granted. We think about the immune system keeping us from getting sick from viruses and bacteria, but the immune system is really defending us against everything around us that wants to decompose us and eat us. I'm going to talk to you about two different types of immunity today. You are born with some pretty important defenses that are called your innate immunity. And your innate immunity is very non-specific in its response. Okay, in other words, regardless of what the foreign particle or the pathogen is, the response is going to be the same. Then we have what's called our acquired immunity. And our acquired immunity is very specific in its response. In other words, it's very antigen specific. This term antigen is very important. An antigen is anything that your immune system detects as foreign, non-self. It can be something as simple as a dog hair, or it could be an actual virus or bacteria, or any other pathogen. We call that an antigen. Okay, I'm going to start with our innate immune system. Our innate immune system is the immunity that we're born with. And again, it's very non-specific, meaning regardless of what we're dealing with, the response is going to be the same. And what's usually called our first line of defense are some things you probably, again, don't really think about on a daily basis. And those are what are called our barrier defenses. The whole idea is keep the pathogen out. Keep it from getting in to start with, and then you don't even have to deal with it. This is the big wall around the body. And the biggest part of that wall is our skin. Our skin is often called the biggest organ in our body. It is an active, live organ. And it produces a physical barrier to pathogens and a chemical barrier to pathogens. If a person is burned or injured in some way and their skin is compromised, they are very prone to infection. And that is because the skin is blocking, physically keeping pathogens out of your body. The reason you didn't wake up covered in mold this morning is thanks to your skin being a chemical barrier. The pH of your skin being slightly acidic, you have sweat, which brings salts with it that kills pathogens. You have oils on your skin. These all make your skin a protective barrier against pathogens. Your stomach acid. Your stomach acid denatures proteins. And so a lot of things that you eat that you don't even know are in your food, bacteria, fungal spores, maybe even parasitic worm eggs, your stomach acid really helps kill most of that. Okay, it's very rare that we get sick from our food, thanks to our stomach acid. We have antimicrobial agents in our tears and our saliva. Pretty much any way you can think of that a pathogen could get in, we have both chemical and physical barriers. to those pathogens getting in. So if you think about all of our tracts, so we have the digestive tract, we have respiratory tract, we have what a lot of people call the urogenital tract, but I'm going to break it down separately. Your reproductive tract, your urinary tract. These all have physical and chemical barriers to pathogens. A big example of that is mucus. Mucus is antimicrobial, plus it physically traps. And if you think about your respiratory tract, you actually have cilia, which are these hair-like projections, plus mucus, and those can work together to move foreign material up out of the respiratory tract, back into your throat, and you can actually swallow that foreign material. So again, the whole idea of these barrier defenses as our first line of defense, keep the pathogen out, and then you don't even have to deal with it. But obviously things get past our barrier defenses. So we do need another line of defense. Again, we're talking about very non-specific ways of dealing with things. So our second line of defense actually involves a lot of things. Okay, one of which is what we call our inflammatory response. And we've all been sick before, and we have all experienced this. We've also all had some type of cut or splinter in which we've experienced this. There are certain white blood cells that release chemicals that cause what we call inflammation. The whole idea of inflammation is bring more blood flow to the area, bring more fluid to the area, increase the temperature of the area. So the temperature slightly increases. We're going to increase blood flow to the area by having chemicals that cause vasodilation. Vasodilation means the blood vessels, in particular the capillaries in that tissue, dilate, increase in diameter, and that increases blood flow to the area and fluid flow to the area, and hence more white blood cells. White blood cells are part of our defense against pathogens. I'm going to talk to you today just about a few of those white blood cells and what their specific roles are in both this inflammatory response and actually just in killing pathogens in general. And then when we get to the specific immune response, the white blood cells are going to play the key role in your specific immune response. Okay, so inflammatory response. Send a lot of fluid to the area, increase the temperature, and now we've brought white blood cells in who can take care of the pathogen. I'm going to talk to you in a minute about what some of those white blood cells are, but I just want to let you know that this inflammatory response is what makes you feel lousy, and it can actually make you very, very sick and even result in death. If you have a really strong inflammatory response, sending a lot of fluid to that area and increasing blood flow to that area, but also some other chemicals, those cytokines that get released. Cytokines are chemical signals that are released by different cells in your immune system. And those cytokines can actually cause a really strong inflammatory response that can make you very sick or kill you. And a good example of that is the 1918 flu pandemic. The 1918 flu pandemic was different from the normal seasonal flu in that it mostly killed young, healthy people. And it wiped out a major portion of the world's population. What we're experiencing right now with COVID is not even close to being on the scale of what happened in the 1918 flu pandemic. It killed young, healthy people very, very quickly. The reason is it actually was a lower respiratory infection rather than an upper respiratory infection. So the virus infected the cells of the lower lungs, and the younger and healthier you were, if you were super healthy, that meant you had a strong inflammatory response to try to kill the pathogen. Well, guess what? That strong inflammatory response said, send a lot of fluid to the lungs, in particular the lower lungs. And guess what? Those people suffocated. They drowned in their own fluids. Sometimes people would be sick in the morning and dead by the evening. It was horrible. By the way, that was the H1N1 strain of the flu. And you will learn about that in a future video on viruses. I'm presenting the immune system first, and then viruses, bacteria, other pathogens after this. Okay, so that's our inflammatory response. So if you get a splinter, there are certain white blood cells that are going to release chemicals that are going to cause increase in blood flow, actually also increases the permeability of your blood vessels, so those white blood cells can move across and get into the infected tissue. Okay, so what are those white blood cells that are part of your immune response? Immune response. White blood cells are also called leukocytes. So leuko means white and cyte means cell. So this would be white cells. I'm just going to talk to you about a few of those today. I'm not going to talk to you about all of the white blood cells. The most numerous white blood cells you have are your neutrophils. You're going to learn how to visually recognize those when you watch the video on how to recognize white blood cells. These are the most numerous. About 60 to 70% of your white blood cells are neutrophils. And these are first on the scene when you have an infection. So if you got a splinter or a cut and it was infected with bacteria, the neutrophils would come in, and they are phagocytes. So through phagocytosis, which remember is called cellular eating, this is bringing in big materials or even entire cells and bringing it in through endocytosis and then digesting that material using the lysosomes to break down that material. And that's what the neutrophils do. That's what all the phagocytes do in our immune system. The phagocytic cells use phagocytosis to bring in even entire bacterial cells. Neutrophils are a really important part. That's your kind of your first line of defense. So part of that inflammatory response is bring more neutrophils to the site of the infection so they can help take care of the problem. The other important phagocytic cells we have are the macrophages. And macrophages are phagocytic cells that would also come in as part of that inflammatory response and devour foreign material. Macrophages are also really important because they're part of what we call our antigen presenting cells. They present foreign material to the immune system so the immune system can figure out what to do with it. They also release cytokines that are going to signal some other important immune responses in the body. Eosinophils. If you had a parasitic worm, you would probably have a high eosinophil count because these attack parasites. They release chemicals that kill the parasite. You also have cells that help with that inflammatory response. So mast cells release chemicals called histamines. If you take antihistamines, you're blocking that response. So mast cells are involved in allergic reactions. And if you think about it, when you have an allergic reaction, a lot of a lot of fluid comes to the area, right? So your immune system is perceiving that that cat hair is dangerous, and you're going to send a lot of fluid to the area. Vasodilation, so your nose gets red, your eyes get red, and a lot of fluid. Your eyes water, you sneeze, your nose runs. Try to flush out that invader, send more blood cells to the area. Okay, you also have some important cells called basophils that are very uncommon compared to most. It's about only 0.5% of your white blood cell count, but these are also involved in allergic reactions along with some other things. Then you have the cells that are really part of your specific immune response. And I'm going to talk about those separately. Those are going to be your lymphocytes. Your lymphocytes are really part of your specific immune response. So I'm not going to talk about them right now. And that's going to include your B cells and your T cells. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different white blood cells. We've talked about the barrier defenses. We've talked about the inflammatory response. You also have a couple of other things that can happen. You have what's called your complement system. And your complement system, it kind of tells you what it does. These are proteins. You make about 20 or more of these that assist the immune system. They assist the white blood cells in doing their job, and they also assist the antibodies in attacking pathogens. And you'll learn more about the complement system if you go on to take microbiology. Okay, we have fever. Again, we're still talking about general things. None of this is pathogen specific yet. Fever is a defense against pathogens, and it's a cascade of events that happens. Its cytokines are released, and those signal the hypothalamus of your brain to increase body temperature. And as you remember, proteins become denatured when temperature increases. Remember that proteins function in a very narrow range of pH and temperature. So if you increase the temperature, you're going to essentially kill the pathogen. The problem is you also damage your own body tissues if you run temperature for too long. So this can be dangerous. Running temperature, having an increased body temperature not only kills the pathogen, but it also stimulates some parts of your immune function. But you just don't want to run temperature, run fever for too long. Some people, you know, if they run kind of just a mild fever, will let that go because that's just part of your normal immune response to help kill that pathogen. Well, at some point, guess what? Sometimes all of this general stuff doesn't work, but most of the time it does. I mean, we've all experienced where we're feeling sick for a day, we get a lot of rest, a lot of fluids, and our immune system takes care of it. But when it doesn't, that's when we need to call in the specific immune response. Specific immune response will be covered in the next video.